To the bicycle industry and members of the NBDA community, thank you for joining us for this very special recording of a conversation today with Nick Hage, General Manager, North America and Japan at Dorel Sports. The NBDA is thankful to the team at Cannondale and their continued support, not only of the NBDA, but retailers and the industry at large. The industry is continuing to evolve at record pace, rapid changes demanding us to stay focused on the collective movements of the industry. With that, the NBDA is committed to opening up conversations with industry members best directed at helping us understand the changing landscape and how we can best position ourselves for future successes. We are extremely appreciative of Nick for joining in the conversation today. Nick has an integral position in bringing Cannondale Assembly back to the US. In this conversation, we will catch up about the industry now, the health of US retailers, the model year change refresh, post-COVID USA retailer needs, independent channel growth tips, including multi-brand, customer service, community engagement, and taking back control. All this and more. Nick, thank you for making the time. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for asking.
Oh my
God. Happy to be here. I'm happy to be here.
We have so much to catch up on. I think last time we spoke, you were headed out to the Vermont 50 mountain bike race. How'd that go?
It was fantastic. But before I start that, let me just give you a little bit of kudos, because I got to say, you have really stepped into this new role of yours with a ton of energy and optimism. And I've actually had fun watching you. And now, Heather, I get to be a part of it, which is pretty exciting. And I should probably thank my friend Andre from Bicycles Pro Shop for getting us in touch. He reached out to me and said, hey, you got to talk to Heather. You got to get on her podcast. So now I get to check this off my bucket list. I'm finally on a podcast. So I just wanted to say that. But the Vermont 50, for those of your listeners that aren't familiar with this event, it's, I think, the largest mountain bike event in New England, and it benefits adaptive sports. Mike Silverman puts on an awesome event up there. It takes place in Ascutney, kind of a hard word to say, Vermont. And it's a total sufferfest. It's 9,000 feet of climbing, 50 miles of class 4 roads and single track. And if I'm not mistaken, you've done the run portion, meaning you've run all 50 miles. Is that right?
Oh my God, Nick, I'm totally with you. Yes, I've done it twice. I don't know, it's crazy in here sometimes, but it's a hard race, just as you say. Challenging, and the area is beautiful, and yeah, I got to do it on the bike someday. I got to do that.
I am in awe of all the runners that complete that thing, because honestly, it takes everything I have to finish it on a bike. But it's a great event. I think I've been doing it now for 12 years, but this year was special because I finally got a chance to beat Dick Drummond from Drummond Cycles up in New Hampshire. And it honestly was the highlight of my year. I hope Dick is listening to this podcast, because I just want to rub it in a little bit more. He's an awesome dude, and he's been hosting our crew. We bring a crew up there to do the race and the event at his house for the last couple of years, and just a fun guy. But I did beat him this year.
Yeah, if he's not listening, I'm sure someone will be, and it'll get back to him.
I'll send him the link to this. Don't worry.
Oh my God, Nick, so such good timing with the recent announcement of the new facility in Georgia. I'm sure you're just super busy. Can you give us a little bit of an overview of what's going on over there?
Yeah, busy's probably a good way to describe it. I mean, the end of the year for us is always a bit hectic. I mean, not only are we trying to wrap up our fiscal year, but we're also deep into planning for the coming year. And on top of that, we've been working on transitioning our company to a new relationship, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but I'm sure many of your listeners have heard about the recent acquisition that we're working through. So lots to do and think about.
Yeah, and before we dive deep forward, for reference, I know 11 years with Dorel Sports. If you would give our listeners just a sense of your background and the history in the industry, because I know it's pretty in depth. I was on LinkedIn checking you out a little bit. So current role with Cannondale and Cycle Sports Group, and what you're doing.
Yeah, I'll take a minute to give a bit of my history. It's probably one of the least interesting things we'll talk about today, but I'll share. So I did grow up in Connecticut. I've lived in Mass, New Hampshire before moving back to Connecticut. So I've been a little all over New England, been married for 25 years. I got 3 daughters, a dog. I do have a degree in chemistry that I have never used, but paid a lot of money for. But luckily, I also studied business in college as a backup. And just a little bit more, I'll go a little further back, but all through high school and college, I did work at Sears selling Craftsman tools on commission, which actually is important. I absolutely loved it. And if I look back at that experience, I honestly learned more doing that than the 4 years at college. It really taught me at a young age how to engage consumers, talk to people, especially about a fairly technical product. So I got really good at selling table saws, never really having used one, right? So I probably learned more there than the chemistry degree. Obviously, I never used it. So when I graduated college, though, I got a job at a company called Pitney Bowes doing B2B sales. So some people may not have heard about that company, big company at the time. I stayed there for 15 years doing all kinds of roles related to sales, sales operations, et cetera. But during that time, I actually fell in love with mountain biking. So I had a coworker who introduced me to the sport, and he used to take me to Vietnam and Hopkinton, Mass. Are you familiar with that place? Have you ever ridden there?
I was going to say, I love that. Is like gnarly old school. I love that.
It is on the Northeast. It still is an iconic spot for technical mountain biking. And early on, I was just in awe of what people were able to ride on a bike. And I just fell in love with the sport. I immersed myself in it. And from there, all of my friends became people I wanted to bike and drink beers with, right? And so during that time period, an opportunity came up to join Cannondale. It was about 11 years ago. And honestly, I jumped right in. And since then, I've had a chance to work with some awesome people, lots that are still here. But honestly, many of them are sprinkled all across the bike industry. There's so many people in this industry that at one point or another worked for one of our brands. So during this time, I've been focused on operations and sales. And just about 4 years ago, I was given the opportunity to oversee North America as the commercial leader and general manager. And in that time, I've been working on really growing the business and establishing our brands in the hearts and minds of riders and retailers. I also do oversee our Japan business, and I bring that up because it really is, it's interesting. One's a totally different market, but it really gives me an opportunity to learn how other retailers halfway across the world operate. And what's interesting about it is an independent bike retailer, no matter where they are in the world, are almost all identical. There are differences in the market, but as an IBD, you could pick up a shop in Tokyo, put it in the middle of New York City, and no one would notice much of a difference. I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah. Oh my God, Nick, I'm like totally vibing off your energy. Even though we're virtually, I can tell right now how excited you are and your path in the industry. And I mean, your tool game must be pretty strong right now in your garage. I mean, I'm sure you've got some awesome Craftsman tools still. That is awesome.
They last forever.
That's what I'm saying. I'm with you on that. But, so I had a very short stint with Cannondale. So I know some people on your team. And I'm a huge fan of Cannondale. I'm not just saying that because you're on the podcast. I mean, you grow up in the Northeast, so close to Connecticut. I think it's kind of like it just seeps into your soul, you know. What gets you about Cannondale? Like, what's the stand apart reason that Cannondale has just got you fired up as a brand?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks. So Cannondale, as you said, it's an iconic brand. And it's an East Coast brand. And not only has it been around for 50 years, but I would argue it probably has one of the most colorful histories of any bike brand out there. So we put out this book, if you'll see this book right here, we put it out this summer to celebrate our 50th year anniversary. And there is some really cool stuff in there. I'll send you a copy, actually.
I was like, hold on, where can we get copies?
Yeah, I'll send you a copy. I'll definitely send you a copy. But as you flip through this book, you're going to be reminded of the rich character of the brand. It's always been a free thinking, not afraid to break away from convention or kind of do things their own way. I mean, it really gets highlighted in that book. But it's also been focused on innovation, a lot on innovation. So that doesn't mean the brand's always gotten it right. Plenty of mistakes along the way. People have stories about those. It's really, really pretty fun to kind of listen to all the things Cannondale's done in the past. But what I would highlight is the brand's never been afraid And so to bring it to life, I think Cannondale can be best described. We use the term lovable rogue. So if you think of a movie character, think of Han Solo, not Luke Skywalker. And there is a difference between those two. So rebellious, a bit of an underdog. We love playing that role. And honestly, it's very motivating for me personally to be in that position. And what I would say is what keeps me motivated is there's still so much work for us to do and really write the next 50 years. I won't be here obviously in the next 50, at the end of the 50 years, but when people look back, I want them to see as rich of a history as they've seen up until this point. And it's fun to be a part of it. And I feel blessed.
I mean, yeah, just to, go off that a little bit, being that I worked in a store for 15 years, managed a store for 15 years that sold so many Cannondales. I mean, we used to say, when you buy a Cannondale, this is your bike for life, that handmade in the USA. And now to hear the announcement of the Georgia facility, and I know that when we talked off record earlier, you said the planning started back in 2019. I mean, this has been a couple of years coming. I don't even know how you kept that undercover, Nick. Like, can you talk to me about the new Georgia facility?
Yeah, absolutely. Love to. So yeah, you're absolutely right. We made the decision to move forward with this back in 2019. But let me, before I talk about Georgia, I think it's important for the listeners to get some context. And many people remember this, but Cannondale's had a long history of manufacturing and assembly. So this isn't really new for us. We've done it for decades in our Bedford, Pennsylvania facility. So many of your listeners remember those days, but also some of them, or probably a lot of them, visited the plant if they were a Cannondale retailer, and some may have even flown on Joe Montgomery's plane, which I hear stories about all the time. He had a private plane, and he would bring retailers down there from Connecticut, to visit the facility, which is actually really, really cool. Around 2015, we made the decision to close that plant and offshore all our production for North America. However, we did keep our assembly plant in Europe, which is located in the Netherlands. So we never really lost the expertise, and we kept our finger on the pulse of how to do it. So as our global business, has continued to grow, we made the decision to take more control of our supply chain, which obviously in the last 2 years, everybody has a degree in supply chain nowadays, no matter what industry you're in, because it's been probably one of the hottest topics, out in the news. But the first step was first to upgrade our European facility and make that a state-of-the-art factory. Where we were before in the current facility, it was old, it was outdated. And now we finally launched what we're calling the Factory of the Future in the Netherlands. And it's an absolutely beautiful facility, and it's really, really impressive. And it's online. If you follow Bike Europe at all, that publication or website, you probably saw pictures of it. So really, really cool. So upgraded the plant in Europe, new processes, new factory, new everything. Really cool.
Such a huge investment, huh?
Huge investment, yeah. So the second step of that process was basically take everything we did in Europe to develop that new factory and just copy paste it right here in North America. And that's exactly what we're doing. So we chose Savannah for several reasons. First, it's close to the port, 18 miles to be exact. And honestly, that's really important because it just cuts down on transit times. I mean, every day we can cut out of the time it takes to get a product to market matters. So East Coast ports are less congested. The state of Georgia just poured hundreds of millions of dollars into upgrading and increasing capacity at that port. And so we found a great facility. We can grow in it. The workforce in Georgia is talented and growing. And this facility will not only serve as an East Coast warehouse, but also the plant where we'll be assembling the majority of our mid to high price point models. So we plan on going live in Q3 of 2022 and ramp up from there.
Such a great thing for the area, for the state of Georgia, for the industry at large. So many new jobs that'll be, available, and just the opportunity. Eventually, hopefully, retailers could even visit this facility. We would hope, right? Just to get closer to the brand and the experience. You said it's opening third quarter next year. What should we expect? How's the ramp up going to look? What should we expect?
Yeah. So we're with a few models. We'll pick a few models to really focus on to build the expertise, get the kinks out, get the process down. We want to minimize any disruptions of getting bikes to the market, especially next year, since it's been so challenging, leading up to this point. So we'll start small, and then we'll ramp up in 2023. And then to your earlier point, we're going to start bringing retailers to Savannah to give them a brand experience. I think that's really important. Retailers want to be a part of that. And I think it's going to be a great place to host a retailer meeting or even a sales meeting. When we go back to doing larger sales meetings, we will absolutely host a meeting down in Savannah. It's a great city, lots of history, should be a really fun place to hang out in.
Yeah, Nick, you mentioned the supply, and this is an opportunity as a brand. It's a huge game changer to take greater control over the supply. It's really, it says a lot. What are your biggest hopes for this project?
Yeah, it is a lot, and it's a big project. So listen, it's going to give us more control and flexibility of how we bring bikes to market. So not only will it cut down on lead times, but we'll be able to better react to market trends. And actually, that's really important. If we're seeing more demand in a certain category or platform, we can prioritize those. Quality is going to improve as we're that much closer, to the product before it gets shipped to the market. And then as part of phase 2, no timing yet on this, but we want to add paint capabilities. That's in our future plans. And so if certain colors are performing better than others, we can make the change. So this is all part of our growth strategy. And this investment, key investment, as you said, it's going to play an important role in us achieving our goals for the future.
Nick, we're going to have to build some cool mountain bike trails. Are you going to be down there a lot? I'm imagining, right?
Well, we'll spend a good amount of time there. It's open now and operating as our East Coast warehouse, but then, next year, absolutely, we're in the process of hiring, getting the equipment there. It's all happening as we speak.
There must be so many challenges. I imagine that some of the concerns would just be getting the people in place and just ramping it up, right? It's go time, right?
It's go time. Yeah, that's the hardest part. Getting the talent, getting the materials ordered. We're working through the early stages. That's the hardest part. You kind of get impatient. You just want to get going. But I just got to be patient. I know it's going to be awesome, and it'll be here before we know it.
I'm imagining you've probably received some feedback from retailers. I saw the article in Brain recently. What are you hearing? What's the feedback been on your side?
Yeah, of course, retailers have never been shy about sharing feedback, which is awesome. On this initiative, it has been 100% positive. So retailers, many of them have been advocating for this type of move. So the sentiment out there is 100% supportive. Many of our retailers were disappointed. Almost all of our retailers were disappointed, when we moved out of Bedford. So bringing it back, bringing this capability, but also experience back to the States, everyone's pretty jazzed about it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Are you hearing this? Are you hearing the same?
I was going to say, I'm hearing the same thing too. The rumors are like, wow, this is fantastic. This is wonderful. Way to go. But I'm sure there's some questions, everyone has questions, with a good announcement, there's concerns, right? Are you getting any questions from retailers as well?
Yeah, timing is one, like when, and so we've been pretty clear about the second half of next year. And then the other question I've got is just will the recent PON acquisition change things, delay things, et cetera? And the answer is no. PON has a deep experience with assembly in Europe as well as North America. They see the value in having this capability, and we're just moving forward, full steam ahead.
Yeah, you stated in Brain, I think that you're aiming to double your market presence in the US. So you'll have 2 facilities. You'll be able to, your capacity for output will triple. Build times in the US are lowered. I think you also stated, I'm just recalling, 100% recycled packaging. Really great. Everything's positive. Walk me through how retailers can help. Are you still looking for additional retailers in the US? How can we help? And what would your shout out be to retailers who are reading this and feel the energy coming?
Yeah, absolutely. So not only do I want Cannondale to be a highly considered brand for anyone buying a bike, but I want Cannondale to be top of mind for any retailer looking to represent a great brand like Cannondale. That's really important, right? can't do much of this without our retail partners. You can't get very far. So retail partners are, especially collaborative, strategic retail partners, are so important for us to continue to build. So I'm going to share my contact info. I think at the end of this conversation, I am always open to chatting with any retailer. So I'd love for people to reach out. But yes, the answer to that question is yes.
Yeah. All right. So Nick, I'm going to ask you to give some secret sauce, maybe. I don't know if you can, but you said mid to high end at the US facility. I'm a huge fan. I ride gravel, road, mountain, you name it. So anything coming down the pipeline bike wise that we could be expecting?
Yeah, I love to hear that you're a fan. So thank you. I know just in terms of products that are coming down the pipeline, and I have to be careful here because I can't share too much new stuff. The product guys will get a bit upset with me, but we do have one product. It's going to launch probably in the next month or early January, and it's a new analog road bike that we are calling the most intelligent bike on the market. Okay, so of course it's going to be an awesome riding bike, but it's also going to come loaded with built-in features, giving the rider a more complete experience. So I'm just going to give you a little hint about what that is. So integrated into the bike will be lights, radar, ride tracking, all connected through a single app, our app. So our product teams really, they're not just designing the bike, they're trying to think about the entire ride experience and design that. So it's all I can really share from now. I don't have any pictures or more detail I can share. So just hold tight for that launch. It's literally weeks away.
I love that. I literally was just in Pisgah Forest the other day. I said to my brother, I'm like, the bike should be able to like record the Garmin should be in the bike. Like the Garmin, everything should have, this is like a little teaser. I love it. Thank you, Nick, for that. All right. So let's talk about rider experience then. What will be marketed to US consumers to grab their attention to the brand? We're going to have this increased capacity. How are you going to reach out to consumers to help retailers, with additional sales?
Yeah. So I'll share a little bit about how we think of riders. I'm going to oversimplify this a lot, but I think it helps kind of drive the point home, and it'll help frame my answer. But internally, we talk about riders that are inside and outside the tent. And so what that means is riders inside the tent, they love the big show that we put on, and they've historically been our core consumer. So they're the enthusiasts, right? They have a deep understanding of bikes. They have multiple bikes. You just mentioned you love all types of riding. I would classify you and I as inside the tent type riders. Okay, so that's our core consumer. This group's important, and we got to keep them engaged, and they expect great stories and products that perform and new innovation. Okay, so we'll continue to do that, and we have lots there, but I'm not going to actually focus on that type of rider. What I want to talk to you about is people outside the tent. So this is important because these riders, they don't think of themselves as cyclists. They're not hardcore riders. So riding a bike is just one of the many activities they enjoy. Over the last 2 years, right? It's been 2 years now. We have added probably more outside the tent riders than we ever have, right? With this bike boom, and we have plenty more to add. So we are really focused on continuing to engage those riders. We want to introduce them to our brand. So I'll give you 3 quick examples of stuff we've just recently done just this past year that kind of gets to that type of rider. The first one is we launched a new comfort mobility e-bike this past year called the Adventure Neo. So our marketing campaign really spoke to that new riders. And we did something a little different. We put up billboards in big cities like San Fran, New York City, Times Square to be exact, London, and Berlin. And we had fun with the messaging. Like example of one of the campaigns was fresh air is good for you. It's good for fresh air. So obviously we're highlighting the fact that riding a bike instead of driving is good for the environment. And people really saw that, especially in big cities and metro areas where streets were closed. People had the freedom to go out, and they were looking for alternative ways to get around, compared to the subway, et cetera. So that was, I thought, a really great campaign that we did. The other thing that we did is we did 2 collaborations this past year that got a lot of attention. The first one was with Palace. It's a skateboard fashion brand. Are you familiar with them at all?
No, I got to check it out now.
Yeah, check it out. Huge following, really, really fun. So in the Giro, we worked with them to design our team kit and bike. And it was one of the highlights of the race. It really spoke to our inside the tent riders. You may remember the Aero duck helmets and the kits. I think we got a fine for doing that, but we had a lot of fun with it, and it did get a lot of attention, and that spoke to the inside the tent riders. But we also did a collaboration with them on an urban bike that they designed for us. And again, it got our brand in front of millions of people that may have never heard of a Cannondale, and a much younger consumer, which is really important. So that was the collaboration with Palace, speaking to a really young consumer. And then just recently, literally just a couple of weeks ago, we did a collaboration with Stella McCartney. She's the daughter of Paul McCartney, and she's a British fashion icon. And she rides her bike every day to work and is a big fan of cycling. So we worked with her and 3 different artists to design a collection of bikes that are actually being displayed at her 4 flagship stores. And this was totally a marketing initiative to get the Cannondale brand and cycling to a different type of audience and to more people. So this is the type of stuff I think your listeners and retailers can expect from us this coming year. We want to keep speaking to both types of riders, inside and outside the tent.
I love this, Nick. I love it so much. And I just yesterday saw some of the early reports of the consumer research project that we did. And, I have to echo what you're saying. We did reach a ton of new cyclists the past 2 years, but the consumer research reports that I've seen the results just yesterday, as I said, there's a whole slew of additional riders that we have yet to reach. So I love the marketing, and I love how out of the box it is, and how you're really reaching people not only to the brand, but to cycling in general, which is a huge win-win for the industry. So
yeah, it's important. It's important.
Love that. Thank you. You stated earlier that IBDs, talking about Europe and the US, there's a lot of similarities. I know Cannondale is celebrating 50 years this year, and you serve both US and European retailers. Insights on the 2 markets, any takeaways or trends that you notice that US retailers might want to pay attention to?
Yeah. Have you been over to Europe, the Netherlands, Germany, any of those countries?
I've been Belgium and Netherlands. I love the area.
It's so one, it's beautiful country, obviously. The countries are beautiful, but I'm always impressed when I get to go to Europe. The growth there has just been awesome. If you specifically take e-bikes, that market continues just to be on fire, and they're years ahead of us, on the trend. But it all really comes down to that investment in infrastructure that they make. And it's just amazing. And riding a bike in Europe is just like a part of life. It's just incredible to see it firsthand. So really, really cool. And this isn't new, obviously. And even through the bike boom, Europe continues to grow at a crazy pace. So here in the US, so that's Europe, fantastic market for us and for the bike industry as a whole. In the US, we've made some progress, but I think we can all be honest and say we still have a ways to go. The pandemic has really highlighted this. But the upside is so great, right? And that's what keeps this exciting, is we have so much room for growth and to get people into the sport or into just commuting, et cetera. And so I think that there are 4 macro trends that I think give us all a reason to believe in a bright future for our industry. So let me give you the 4. So first one, there's a greater focus on health and wellness. People are getting fit, both physically and mentally. There is no doubt that trend continues to accelerate here in the US and in North America. So health and wellness, number 1. The second one is a desire for green living and a cleaner environment. People are ready to make a difference. This younger generation, my kids, your kids, they're not going to put up with the same shit of the past, right? They want to make a difference in this area. Okay. Third, desire for more engaging outdoor experience. This exploded since the start of the pandemic. People are getting outside more. It's awesome. I love to see it. Anytime I'm on my local trail system, I'm seeing more and more people out there enjoying nature. That's a good thing. And then the last one is this need for more mobility options and a willingness to invest in infrastructure. So the Build Back Better infrastructure plan, really encouraging. The work People for Bikes is doing is just invaluable to our industry. We're big supporters, of that team and their work. But if you take those 4 factors, I would argue bike checks every one of those boxes off. I think that's a pretty strong argument to be optimistic, Heather. What do you think?
I'm 100% with you. I agree. And the work that People for Bikes is doing is great. And yeah, I'm with you on the 4. I think you just nailed that one, Nick. I'm with you. All right, COVID, 2 continents, the D2C multi-brand environment. Anything you're noticing as far as tips for retailers as we continue, to navigate how they can excel?
Yeah. So we could probably spend an entire podcast on this topic, and you probably wouldn't have me as a guest. I'm not an expert in this area, but I'm happy to share what little I know. So we did just launch our click and collect capability this summer on Cannondale.com. It was something we've been planning on doing since early 2020, but it just got so crazy that we just put it on hold. Like other initiatives, we were just dealing with just everything else that was on our plate. So we put it on hold. But we launched it this summer, and we had limited inventory of our own and at retail. So we knew we wouldn't be able to do that much with it. But our goal early on was just to learn. You have to learn how to do this. You have to learn how to sell online. So we knew it was important to modernize our consumer experience. So what I mean by that is shoppers now just have a certain expectation, right? When they go to a brand or retailer website, their expectations are really high, right? So they want to be able to find products easily. They want to be able to learn about them quickly, and they expect the buying process to be as frictionless as possible. You got to make it easy for the consumer. That's one of the reasons why Amazon does so well, right? Their assortment.
When I want it, where I want it, when I want it.
Yeah. So consumers also, or shoppers also want to know what's in stock immediately. So if they want to purchase it, they want to know it's in stock right then and there. So it's kind of weird nowadays. If you go to any website, regardless of the industry, and you can't just add something to your cart and buy it, it's kind of like weird. It's like, is this even a real website? So
it's like, what's wrong, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we got to modernize. The bike industry has to obviously grow in this area. So we're going to continue to build on this capability, working with our retail partners. If I were to give retailers any advice, it's really just to have a plan. I do know that this is a much bigger burden for smaller retailers. But luckily, there's plug and play tools like Smart Detailing. I think Ryan Atkinson and his team do a great job supporting retailers that just don't have the resources to do this on their own, right? So they try to make it easy for retailers. The other piece of advice I'd give retailers is you got to make sure you're sharing your inventory with your suppliers. So this gives, like on Cannondale, this gives us the ability to highlight those retailers on our website so shoppers can find the products and then go buy them locally. So if you look at the big picture, online sales are growing, fast pace, but brick and mortar sales are still make up. I think the latest stat I saw was still make up 80% of all purchases, right? But online's growing. And so the mix between online in-store, we can't ignore it. Online's going to continue to grow. Brick and mortar is always going to be important. The two have to come together.
Yeah. And going back to that consumer research report, and like I said, I just read it yesterday, so it's on the tip of my mind, but fitting here, the largest respondents were that people did buy at the brick and mortar store, but behind that, it was the major department stores and then online. So working together, brands and suppliers in unison can keep those customers, local or at the local bike shop. All right, I'm going to hit you off guard with this one. I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this one.
Yeah.
I asked many guests on the podcast. I think it's really fitting right here. In your opinion, we talk about bicycle retailers of excellence. What traits would make up a bicycle retailer of excellence?
Yeah. So luckily, when I first took over as the commercial leader for this market, I had a phrase that I just kept repeating and repeating. And so I'm going to take, there's four elements, and I'm going to take those four elements and share this with you because I think it's really important. So if I were to think about my personal expectation, just to give a little context, when I'm going to buy something, especially something somewhat technical, a car, surfboard, a chainsaw, they're expensive. I don't know a lot about them. You know, you want to go somewhere to learn about them and get and have an experience, get the education, and then make a purchase with confidence, right? Probably the best way to describe it. So the first thing is retailers need to make sure that they have an inviting and quality in-store and online experience, which we just talked about, right? So the bar keeps rising with consumers. You got to make sure you give them a great experience when they visit you. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the best retailers offer a portfolio of brands. They offer choice. Not everyone is going to be interested in products from just one brand. You've got to be able to show them models or products across different brands because brand resonates with consumers, and one brand may not speak to one consumer, whereas another one may. Right. And so having a portfolio of brands, we absolutely believe in. Third, they need to be able to provide great customer service and expertise, right? So this is an area that I think IBDs absolutely can stand out in, is if you can provide great customer service, the right level of expertise, you're going to stand out from anywhere else a person can buy a bike. Yes. And then the last one, and this is probably the hardest one, right, is creating a community for riders to engage with, right? So giving riders like this sense of being part of a tribe that they can relate to, ride with. It's really, really important in the cycling community. People want to come together to ride, especially as you move up the range in terms of enthusiast level. People are looking for that level of engagement. So the best retailers do all four. And in all honesty, you can't skip any of them if you're like striving for excellence, right? And so it's a lot of work. It's not easy. And by the way, the list of what makes an excellent supplier is like twice as long. So I am not going to pretend that I do them all well, right? So humility is important here. Admitting what you're good at is the first step to getting better. But all those things I mentioned, I think, are really important if a retailer wants to excel.
I think you hit it on the head there, Nick, and let's touch on that third one, which is the excellent customer service. Something we talk often about, like the greeting when someone comes in. You've worked with hundreds of retailers, maybe thousands. Any traits, talking specifically about excellent customer service that stood out to you that you would share?
All right, I had to take a sip of water. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so all right, so listen, it always comes down to people, right? People are what create the experience. So having a well-trained, knowledgeable, friendly staff that can engage people, support shoppers, that's really at the heart of great customer service. Finding those great people is probably the single biggest struggle many retailers have. Right. We struggle with it. So just like in my business, I do what we can to train people and reward people, but you got to keep building a bench. I think that's the important thing that people have to keep in mind is people do leave, and many times for good reasons. Many of the people that work for us probably came from retail at one point in their career, and they were given a chance to be promoted and progress in their careers. So you can't keep everyone. So you always got to be networking to look for that new, fresh talent that's out there. One of the things that we're doing, though, to support retailers is we are financial supporters of the BIEA. So that program launched just about a year ago. Their mission is really to work with regionally accredited colleges to develop programs that are really just focused on bikes, right? So it's another step in professionalizing a career in the bike industry, which I think is really important. And we need that.
I'm with
We need
you.
more bike technicians, right? Bikes are complicated. They're only getting more complicated. A good mechanic's probably worth their weight in gold right now, or crypto, whichever one you want to reference, but we don't have enough of them. So this program's working on creating more legit careers for those that want to pursue it. I'm really excited to see the fruits of this program come to life. And I think they're going to continue to look to expand. I think they're in 1 or 2 markets now and looking to expand across the country. So that's going to be great for our industry.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Customer service comes down to people. And I love what your mention of the BIEA, love what they're doing. The community engagement piece, part 4 of the excellent retailer that you touched upon is huge. And we continue to say to retailers, engage with your community, engage with your community. And sometimes they're like, all right, well, I'm trying, or I'm not, what am I doing wrong? How can retailers, in your opinion, really make an impression on engaging with their community?
Yeah, I'm sure you have retailers that are experts in this that can probably give a better answer than I can. But here's how I just think about it. I mean, the majority of retailers aren't destination sites, meaning that most IBDs serve their local communities, and just being present locally and showing up is probably one of the best investments they can make. It does take time, but what I mean by that is that retailers need to take part in events and activities that are happening in their backyard. So this can be supporting a local race, showing up at trail maintenance days, getting involved in youth programs, or just offering like all level group rides, right? So for the roadies, but also for new people entering the sport, just giving them that tribe that we talked about. So I know I'm making it sound easy. It is important. It does take time, and that little bit of extra effort can make a big difference.
Yeah, I know there's so many hats we have to wear, right, as retailers, and we continue to give them, give these tips or give these moments of advice, but there's a lot to consider. If we just flip back over to the way that the Cannondale is it working in the US, are you working with independent or factory reps? I don't know that, and I just wanted to ask.
Yeah, no, good. Great question. So we strictly work with factory reps. So I have about 30 reps located all across North America and just about every major market. Many of them have been with Cannondale for a long time. Many of our reps started out in customer service, warranty. They've kind of grown up within the company and into being a territory rep. So again, giving your employees a way to contribute, grow, helps you keep them for a long time, which we obviously try to do. And we've also added some new talent recently from outside our company, and I think it's great to add a healthy, fresh perspective from outside, your company or even from another industry. They tend to bring some new ideas. So, but factory reps is predominantly how we operate.
I mean, being that most of them have been with the company for such a long time, that speaks volumes right there. And reps can play such an integral role in working with the retailer to truly help connect the brand to the shop, to the community, just engage, because when shops are equipped with the knowledge of a brand and the history and or what's happening in the US as far as the new facility, it helps them better position the brand. So that's fabulous. 30 brands throughout, or 30 reps throughout the US. And you mentioned earlier, you're still looking to add retailers as you're growing. So that's a positive. I'm sure. Would people reach out to you, or if retailers are interested in bringing Cannondale into their store, what's the step for them?
Yeah. So we're always looking for partners. I mean, in this environment, you have to, right? So there's so much change happening. I mean, every time I open up the Brain website, you're kind of hearing changes that are happening, within the market and with retailers. So you got to be prepared. There's lots of retailers that, deciding to retire, they're deciding to move on, they're maybe selling to a particular brand. So change is just part of what we have to manage. And you always just have to keep your options open as a brand. And so, yeah, they can just reach out to us. I'm going to give you my contact information here at the end, but happy to talk to any retailers if they're interested in representing the brand. We'll put them in contact with the right people.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, we have retailers reaching out all the time, to help them. So that would be fabulous. Going back to the model year change. So Cannondale recently announced a big adjustment to what I would call the standard bicycle model year program that was, really from the show from September forward. Now we're looking at a January forward date. Super intriguing. Can you talk about the why behind this change, if you would?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, this was a big decision that we made. The model year debate's been going on for, I think, a long time. I think as long as I've been in the industry. And I remember when I first joined over a decade ago, I scratched my head about this whole process. It was really confusing. It took me a while to really kind of wrap my head around it. And it just didn't make a lot of logical sense to me. And I remember asking so many people to explain it to me and why we operated in this way. And most people would just kind of like shrug their shoulders and be like, oh, it's the bike industry.
How we do it.
Yeah. And so every year, if you think about what we used to do, every year we would change the model year of bikes, even when there was very little that changed about them. And we would tell consumers that's old now and you need to buy this new one. And we would artificially obsolete products. And the crazy part is we would do it right in the middle of the summer at the height of the retail season. So we only gave retailers half of a season to really sell the bikes before we came in and told them, hey, all this stuff is brand new. So fast forward to 2019, we decided to break away from the norm. So internally, we called it fixing a broken system, right? We wanted to fix what we felt was a broken system. So we went on to make 3 key changes to our business model. So first, we aligned our business cycle with our retailers. And what I mean by that is we moved to a calendar year timing. And so what that does is it gives retailers a full season to sell products. We don't show up in the summer and say, all that stuff you have now is old, start buying all this new stuff, while they still have product, on their floors, in their warehouse, et cetera. The second thing we did is we took steps to extend the life cycle of many of our core models. So some models will live now for 2 to 3 years. And what we do to keep things interesting is we add colors throughout that time period. So to the consumer, both colors, the color from last year and the new color we just added, they're both current. The rider never feels like they're buying something old. Same thing if we update a component on a bike. It could be a stem, wheel, saddle, whatever. We just make the running change and we never artificially obsolete the prior models. So we keep both on our website. They're both listed as current products. Retailers never feel the need to have to discount it, which obviously improves their margins. When we do make a significant change, like we change the frame and it's a completely different bike, then we phase out the old and introduce the new. And we try to do that over the winter months at the start of the season. So that's true for like a $700 hybrid or even like a 105 road bike. Those are like core bikes in a retailer's portfolio. So the other thing that we did is for new innovations, more innovative product, kind of higher in the range, those tend to be like high price point bikes. Our goal for those is to launch them at the start of the season in early spring, again, giving retailers an entire season to sell through them. So if you think of the bell curve, the low points are the late fall, winter, and then the season ramps up. Peak is sometime in the summer, say July, et cetera, depending on the market, and then comes back down in the fall and winter. And so now we don't break the season in half. We give retailers the entire season to sell our products before we start introducing anything different or new. We're also not trying to load our retailers up with inventory they don't need at the end of the summer, which they just sit on to the start of the season. So we're timing our inventory to come in closer to when the season starts, which just makes the entire industry and relationship with our retailers healthier. We have a phrase internally that we use. We just call this common sense, common goals. So if you just use a little bit of common sense and you have common goals with your strategic partners, your retailers, this will just make everybody better.
Yeah, Nick, I am really listening to what you're saying, and I could not agree more. I feel like the system we had in place was really just like a helping brands forecast, like retailers were helping, when really those products, those newer products wouldn't even really ship anyway until like after, February, March anyway. So this just a nice reset. It puts things, and coming from a brand, I worked prior with Bianchi. We had models that were in the lineup for years with no changes in it. I saw firsthand how it helped retailers better position the product, less discounting, and it was better for the supplier too at the end of the day. So I'm really excited to see this. Thank you. And I love the explanation that you just gave. Do you think the other brands might follow suit and kind of, get on this new system that you've put in place?
I mean, we hope they do, but honestly, frankly, we don't really care. I mean, this is like a fundamental change we made to our business model that we feel like improves our business, but also improves our retailers' business. We're the first of the big brands to make the change. We hope others join in, but that's really up to them. It's a decision that they'll make. But I think it'll be better for retailers if the industry moves in this direction. There's no doubt about it.
Nick, what has the response been from retailers?
Super positive. I mean, honestly, we did it in 2020, and so this will be the second year, of the program. Obviously, all the craziness of the supply chain and everything else has kind of like muted, I think, not the results, but like the reception, because it's just been chaos up until this point. I think it'll really start to come to life next year and in 2023 when things start to get back to whatever normal is.
Yeah, whatever normal. Yeah, talking about the craziness, all the rapid, changes happening, just going back to bicycle retailers and how they can focus to keep their shop profitable. Any thoughts about, if you were a retailer, where you might be focusing now just on everything you're seeing with the market and the industry at large?
Yeah, so back to that normal word. So every retailer right now is thinking about what things will be like when things normalize, or whatever that new normal is going to be, and everyone's trying to figure that out, obviously, and not even just in the bike industry, but just in general.
Right.
The last 2 years have been a blur, right?
Right.
Everyone's had their heads down. It's been a grind, et cetera. So I don't want to rehash any of that. We've all lived through it. But just like any brand, retailers need to think about how they prepare for phase two. Like, have they invested in their business? Have they diversified their suppliers? A lot of retailers found themselves kind of short because they didn't have enough suppliers, right? And they were out looking and hunting for brands to get bikes from. So did they diversify in that area? And then really, how do they stay connected to all these new riders that they've been able to acquire, right? And can they say they've emerged from this time, from this bike boom, stronger than when it started? So if retailers look and say, are we in a better position now than we were, say, in 2019? Have we made the changes to kind of adapt our business? That's really the big question. I mean, there's no doubt retail's not easy. Retailers have never worked probably as hard as they have in the last 2 years. And even though we've enjoyed this period of heightened demand, things will change a bit in a good way, but also in a way that's different than it is today. So in summary, if I was a retailer, I'd be thinking about diversifying my suppliers, working to establish my presence online in a meaningful way, and then thinking of all the ways I can stay connected to these new customers that I've been able to acquire. It's all easy stuff. It's all easy stuff.
I mean, in the rapid growth of e-bikes, Nick, I mean, that is something that's just been a complete surge. And as this, hopefully the e-bike bill comes to fruition, we're going to continue to see. So yeah, all this easy stuff, right, Nick? No big deal.
That's right.
All right. So let's just, elephant in the room, more factory stores, but we also at the same time have had this nice, influx of new riders, a nice kind of reset, stronger IBDs, hopefully right now. We consistently get asked our thoughts about factory stores. Every show I've been to, every trade show, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are your thoughts about factory stores?
Yeah, I have some pretty strong opinions on this one. So in my opinion, the IBD is the soul of the bike industry. It will never and can never be replaced. And it is absolutely unique. And, I talk to people outside the industry, whether they're consultants or outsiders, et cetera. And when I say the bike industry is unique, and I know people, they roll their eyes and they say they hear that all the time from other industries, but I absolutely believe it's true for the bike industry. I don't see a future that doesn't include the IBD. Now, that doesn't mean bikes won't be sold in other channels or through factory stores. Those other channels play an important role in serving riders, right? Especially across the spectrum. But the IBD must be the core. I go back to those 4 factors I mentioned earlier of what makes an excellent retailer. A single branded corporate store will never outperform an IBD that checks off the 4 criteria. It can't. They will never be able to outperform a quality IBD that offers a multi-brand portfolio, that's engaged in the community, that has great customer service, et cetera, et cetera. So those corporate stores, they don't have the same soul. They can never outperform. The IBD is always going to be around. Will it change? Will the chess pieces get moved? Will some retailers get stronger and grow and take over a region? Yes, absolutely. All those things will happen. IBD is going to still be at the core.
Yeah, I am with you on this one. Again, Nick, we are getting along. I think we need to take a ride soon or something, because we're totally like, I'm with you at this. I don't think anything can replace an IBD that that is the soul of the community. And when you have all those 4 things lined up, you are just soaring and roaring, and you're going to make a profound impact on everyone who comes in your door. So I'm with
Totally
you.
agree.
And yeah, it's a changing landscape, and we're going to have factory stores, but the IBD has a place, and we will continue to be strong and purposeful in the industry. Okay, you might shoot me for this one. And I do this, I never know why I ask people to choose just one, but is there any retailer that stands out to you that we should check out, what they're doing?
Oh, how do I pick one?
I know.
Do you know how many angry texts I'll get if I don't at least mention a few? So I'm going to mention a few,
Right.
if that's okay. So here are a few that just really stand out to me, and I've obviously spent a lot of time with them, visiting their stores, with their employees, riding with them. So Race Pace in Baltimore, not sure if you've ever been there, do an amazing job, fantastic retailer. Alex and Nick are just pros at what they do. So Race Pace is one. Pro Bike and Run in Pittsburgh.
Oh, yep.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome. Oh, they're doing some really cool stuff. Craig Koza, the owner, he's got some really big ideas of how to differentiate his retail experience. It's actually been fun watching him, but I think they do a fantastic job. Conti's, they have locations all up and down the East Coast. They're killing it right now. They continue to grow. They continue to add new locations. They're a great example of a regional retailer that continues to thrive. And then I'd be remiss not to mention my friends at InCycle in Southern California. That crew does it all, and they do it really well. So Mark, Dom, the team there, they are probably some of the hardest working people in the industry. They're engaged in their community. They're doing the group rides. They're at events. Those guys just kill it. So I think those are great examples, and they're all kind of all over the country, of retailers I just mentioned that I kind of check off every one of the boxes of what makes a great retailer.
Yeah, thank you for giving me more than one, because that's not fair. And what I'm noticing about all the shops that you mentioned is that they're leaders, they're not followers, and they're truly unique, and they have their ideas of what'll work, and they're chasing them and going after them and making them reality. So thank you for that incredible list.
Absolutely.
For our listeners, go to their websites, check out those shops, just see what they're doing. Okay, a couple more for you, Nick. Any, if you would sum up maybe some of your biggest concerns for the industry right now, not to bring it down a notch and not to be a downer, but.
Yeah, that's okay. And I think this is unique to the US, but you asked me earlier the difference between Europe and the US. And in Europe, not only is that market fantastic, but the IBD channel is actually really healthy, and they're very independent. And what I mean by that is retailers there really do maintain control of their businesses. They haven't or don't face the same pressures retailers do here in the US. And what I mean by that is that there's more parity among brands. There's a lot more brands, and there's more parity across them. And so here in the US, we have basically 2 brands that command over 50% of market share in the IBD. And so what that does is it just puts pressure on retailers. And to a certain extent, retailers have lost the ability to do what's best for their business, right? And so when a brand dictates that you have to give them 65% or 80% of your sales, then you really aren't independent anymore, right?
Right.
So as a retailer, you basically take on all the risk. You put yourself in a position where you can't do what you think is in the best interest of your business and your employees. And that's been going on for a number of years, but I think it's gotten worse in the last probably year or so. And I view our goal, my goal, is to create more parity in this market. It's give retailers an alternative choice, level the playing field, put more power in the hands of retailers. All those things I think will lead to a healthier industry. I know we can get there, no doubt about it, but a lot of it will come down to the decisions retailers make.
Yeah, we have these Monday member meetups where we come together and it's kind of, we just talk openly and you never know how many retailers we're going to get. And we share our concerns and, our wins and challenges. And this conversation comes up a lot, Nick. It's like, okay, we want you to do what's best for your business, but how do you do what's best for your business when you have the, you're put in these boxes that you have to, select from. So I am hopeful that the work we're doing at the NBDA, we can create this ecosystem where we're all working together and we're listening to each other. We'll get there eventually.
We will. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's bring it up a notch. Let's flip that question to the biggest opportunities that you see for the bicycle industry.
Yeah, I mean, we got this like snowball rolling downhill right now. It's probably the tailwind we're seeing now is probably once in a generation. So we got this like thing happening and we can't waste it, right? So we need to keep people engaged. All these new riders, we have to keep them engaged. The 4 macro trends that I mentioned earlier, they're not going anywhere anytime soon, right? So they're here to stay. That's going to help. But secondly, retailers need to keep diversifying their suppliers and their offerings. Take back control. This is the time to do it. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. If we do that and we keep the IBD healthy, I just feel like we're setting ourselves up for a bright future. So that to me is the biggest opportunity. It's all these new riders and it's keeping that IBD channel as healthy as possible. I'm going to keep beating that drum every chance I get.
I'm beating it with you. I'm beating it with you. What's next for you, Nick? We got the Georgia facility opening. What projects are you working on?
Yeah, so so the biggest thing now, as I mentioned earlier, Pond just announced they'll be acquiring Dorel Sports. That's a pretty big deal, not only for us, but the industry. So over the coming months, we'll be really focused on working with Pond on integrating our business with theirs. So everyone here, super excited and eager to join the Pond family. I honestly can't think of a better scenario for our portfolio of brands. Dorel did a great job and they were great stewards. But now it's time to hand the baton to somebody else who's going to, hopefully bring us to a new level. And we're very optimistic about this new relationship. And for those of your listeners that maybe aren't as familiar with Pond, they are a forward-thinking, brand-focused mobility company. So to be a part of a portfolio that includes brands like Santa Cruz, Cervelo, Gazelle, to name a few, they have other brands in Europe, et cetera. Man, there's going to be so much we can learn from each other. The combination of the two companies is going to be something pretty special. And personally, I can't wait to be a part of it. So lots more on this topic when the transaction becomes complete sometime in the new year, but lots of work to do between now and then.
Yeah, I imagine. And I love your authentically stoke level is super high about this, Nick. So that's a really warm feeling, because you never know, right? But I can tell, you've already heard the news and you're an insider and you've digested it and it seems really positive. So I'm really glad to hear that.
People internally are very excited about what the future holds. They really are.
That's fantastic. Okay, personally, you got any races on the calendar?
I'm not really much of a racer, honestly.
Seriously, I'm thinking you're like this big endurance racer.
No, I do one a year. It's the Vermont 50. Honestly, most of the time I'm just, I'll go to an event just to hang out with friends and coworkers. But most of my time, honestly, is spent mountain biking and doing trail work on my local network. So I'm fortunate enough. I live on a state forest here in Connecticut that has 20 miles of single track. They're right in my backyard, literally in my backyard. So I just love hitting the trails, bringing new people out to ride trails that I've maintained or built, And so the trails are they're good old East Coast tech. Lots of rocks, roots, lots of features to send it on. So really fun place. And so it's so convenient. That's where I spend most of my time, honestly.
I love it. All right. So since you're a mountain biker and since I have your captive attention
Yep.
now, any must ride place that you've been to?
There is a favorite. Anytime I get a chance to go up to Vancouver, Canada, not only is it's one of my favorite cities in North America, it absolutely has some of the best mountain biking and mountain bike culture in the world. So that is number one spot in my heart of places to ride. When I go to Vancouver, I have to ride those trails, and they're literally right across the water from the city. You look up at the mountains, and there's just miles and miles and miles of amazing mountain biking.
I'm with you. I did the BC bike race and there was one stage was in Vancouver, a pretty awesome technical riding.
So fun, so fun.
Love it. All right. So let's wrap it up for everyone listening, viewing. They want to contact you, learn more about Cannondale, just follow up on any of the topics we discussed because we didn't have time to get into everything in super depth. Would you share your contact?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah. Honestly, the best way to get a hold of me is my cell number. So phone number is area code 203-940-3797. Just shoot me a text. I prefer that over emails, honestly, and I'll be happy to connect and say hello. Just say who you are, where you're from, and happy to talk all things bike and business.
Nick, you're super cool. I love the text. Yeah, I'm a texter too. I totally get it.
No more emails. No more emails.
No more emails. The inbox is full.
Yeah.
Nick, thank you. Thank you for coming on and for taking the time out of your day to share your insights with our members and the industry at large. We really appreciate you. Your team has been fantastic with helping the NBDA get retailers the information they need now. And people like you, man, you are adding to this ecosystem that we're creating that is just truly awesome people. So thank you.
Oh, happy to be a part of it, and I feel blessed every day to be in this industry and work for these great brands. So.
All right, so those who listened or watched the episode today, you can reach out to Nick at the contact as he said. If you'd like, always send me an email, heather@nbda.com, and I can connect you with Nick as well. Thank you, Nick. Have a great afternoon.
Good seeing you. Bye now.